So we're going to be making salt dough ornaments, and there's a few things that you'll need. So you'll need some sort of bowl to put the mixture into. You'll need flour. So in the UK it's called plain flour. It's the non-rising kind. In North America you can just use all-purpose flour. You will need salt, and you will need warm water. So those are the main three things. You'll need something to actually measure them with. Okay. And then you'll need some extra things kind of a little bit later on, which is something to put them on to either air dry or bake them. If you're going to bake them, then I would suggest using grease-proof parchment or baking tape paper so that they don't stick to things when you actually cook them. You will also need, once your dough is made, something to cut them. So I would suggest just using like a glass. You can use different sizes of glasses to make different size ornaments, so just kind of like a Christmas bauble. If you have, cookie cutters, great, you can use those, but you can also just use your hands, and I will show you how. You will need something to roll it out, so I have my handy dandy rolling pin. If you want to color them before you bake them or before you dry them, you can use food coloring. However, you can also paint them afterwards, so you can just use normal types of paints. You can decorate them with things like glitter if you choose to. And then to seal them in, I usually use something like white glue. You can also get a spray sealant or something called Mod Podge, which you can actually cover them in. To hang them, you're going to need something to actually create the hole, so you can use a straw, or you can use something like a pencil, or just even, the end of some kind of utensil. It's up to you how you choose to do it. There's not a whole lot involved. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to get a cup full of flour. So let's do that. 1 cup of flour in my bowl, which is equivalent to approximately 250 grams if you're weighing it. The nice thing about this is that it doesn't have to be exact. If it's too watery, you add more flour, a little bit more flour. If it's too floury, then you add a bit more water. That's all there is to it. Now I need a half a cup of salt. What is that one? Yes, a half a cup. So 1 cup flour, half a cup of salt, and then a half a cup of water. So here we go. So you do need an awful lot of salt. It doesn't taste nice, so I wouldn't recommend eating this. So it's not a bakeable like biscuit that you could eat like gingerbread. These are meant to be more or less ornaments or decorations or clay-like things. They're not meant to be eaten. Okay, so we've got almost, there we go. So half a cup of salt into my bowl, as you can see. And as I said, about a half a cup of water. So that's about 125 milliliters. So I am switching here. 125 milliliters. And recommend using warm water because it will help to melt kind of all together. So if you've boiled it, you can kind of see the steam rising off mine. Be careful with little kids doing this. It doesn't have to be hot, just warm. Okay, so once that's all in, you can start mixing it with a spoon if you choose. I'm just going to switch here for a second so you can see it. So once it's in, you can kind of see it. So you can start mixing it. And as you start mixing it, you'll start to see that it starts to form like a dough. Okay. And then once it gets to a certain point, I would recommend using your hands. So you can see how it's starting to come together. So now you can start to use your hands in there. Okay. And just make sure that you mix it well. So keep mixing it until it is In the last bit we were mixing it, so I've washed my hands a bit. So just here I want to show you, so like I said, you don't have to be exact. Apologies about the cat. He loves the decorations. So basically, I said to you that you don't have to be exact in your measurements because you'll kind of try to start to even it out a little bit towards the end. So I'm just going to show you now. Okay. There we go. So you can see our dough. We've mixed it. However, look at all of the flour we have left. So we measured out the water to the half a cup of water. Now, unfortunately, we have a lot of flour left, and the dough is quite floury. So all we're going to do is we are going to take a bit more water, very small amounts. And as we do this, we're just going to pour very small amounts in. Okay. Very small amounts in, and as we do that, the dough will moisten up so you can hear it if you're listening very carefully. Okay, and we are just going to continue with our hands to mix it. Okay, so just continuing to mix it, and if it gets too watery and wet, then we're going to mix a tiny bit more flour in until we get it right. Okay, so we just do small amounts both times. And we work away at it until we have something that is workable. So this is almost good. We just have to mix it a little bit more. So you can see most of the flour that was underneath now has been picked up, and the dough is all kind of stuck together. It's not too watery, it's not runny. Okay, so it's moldable, which is what we want. Okay, so we want to just get rid of this last little bit of flour, and then the dough will be perfect. So I'm just going to continue to knead that until that last little bit of flour that's still on the bowl is completed. Okay, so don't have enough hands here, so excuse me, you're going to look at my lovely tablecloth. There we go. I am doing this dual recorder, so that way you can see what I'm doing at the same time as how I'm doing it. Because I wanted you to be able to see in the bowl as well as see me as I'm doing things. So a good dough should be able to be picked up and shaped, and you should be able to come away with not too much of it on your hands. That's kind of the idea of what a good dough is. Now, if it's too sticky, don't worry about that. If you find that it's really sticky and you're worried about that, what we do is when we roll it out, we put a little bit more flour down on the sheet that we're rolling it out onto. Okay, so that is a good dough because my hand is still coming away clean even though I'm helping to mix it. And I'm picking up any little remainders in the bowl. Now the bowl is never going to be completely clean, but you can see it's quite a bit better than what it was when I first started. And just continue to mix it in until you've got a nice piece of dough. Okay. Okay, so it's like, where's the cat going to be next when I start the video up? Okay, so now basically, if you've kneaded it right, your bowl should be almost completely clean. Yeah, and you will have dough that you can actually form into a ball. So just going to show you that for a minute. So if you've done it correctly, you should be able to kind of mold them into like balls. Now this part is kind of optional depending on how you want to do your decorating. So I'm going to show you this little bit which is optional. So I have created a couple of little balls, which I'm going to be putting into some smaller bowls. What I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to be adding food coloring to them. Okay, so these ones I'm going to be adding food coloring to, whereas I'm going to leave some natural and going to use it to paint afterwards. So that way you can see both versions of it. The other little ball that's there is I'm going to add some white to it. And I'm going to do it a little bit differently because I'm actually going to add the paint to it, the white paint to it before as like food coloring, because I don't have white food coloring. So we're going to add white paint to it. So that's going to be a little bit different. So in regards to these ones, you're going to add some food coloring. Now you're going to do as little as at a time as you can. Okay, so I'm just going to switch back to me so you can see me. So again, you don't need to add a lot of food coloring, okay? And this can get quite messy. So give me a second, I'm just gonna pause. So when I say you don't need a lot, I typically use a toothpick for adding the color to it. Okay, it's been a while. So just making a small amount. I'm going to shake this for a minute. If you haven't used your food coloring in a while, make sure you shake it because otherwise it comes out a little bit oily, and you don't want that. You want good color. So you can see a bit more color. And again, as I said, you don't need to do a lot at a time. Okay, so work in a small amount. This will get, your hands will probably go a funny color, so you probably will have to wash them in between. Okay, hopefully most of the dough will take the color away, and it depends again how dark you want it, how much you put on. So I've started with a little bit, so it has started very, very slightly to color. So I'm going to continue with this. I'm going to do the red for a minute so you can see the red. The red one will go a slight tinge of pink. If I can get this toothpick out, there we go. And as I said, I do it slow, a little bit by little bit by little bit. Okay, because that way what happens is I get the right color that I want, and I don't get stains everywhere, because that's not what you want. You don't want stains being everywhere on you. It will stain, food coloring stains everything, so just be careful when you're using it. Okay, so again, you can see just small amounts of food coloring, and as you slowly work it in, mixing it in, and it does, this is what takes probably the longest, is slowly working it in, so you can see it's starting to color. And you just continue with it until you get the color you want. Okay, so I'm going to continue with that, and then I will start. So I've gotten them to the consistency I want them to be. Just let me show you here what they look like. So here you go. So we've got my red. Oh, hang on. Here we go. So we've got my red, my green, and I'm going to tell you that I mixed quite a bit of paint in, and all that happened is that I got paint around my fingers. And to be totally honest, in regards to the paint versus the no paint, I'm not really seeing much of a difference. It still seems to be very similar in color. So if you want something like white, I would suggest just either leaving it plain or painting it afterwards. That's my kind of go-to. But as you can see in regards to like the green and the red, now what's going to happen when we cook these is that they will fade slightly. So they may appear quite dark now, but those will not be the final colors once they're baked. Now, I will also tell you that I've tried something a little bit different this time around, because in regards to the red, I have added some ground cinnamon to help it smell just a little bit nicer. So if you are wanting to experiment with getting them to smell, you know, you might choose to add some spices to them or that kind of stuff. But remember that with kids, be careful what you use. Same thing, my hands have come away pretty clean. They were bright red and green when I started. Kids, if these colors get into your clothes and that, it will stain. Same thing on carpet or mom's good tablecloth, they will stain. So this is what I've got right now, and yes, you see my water that I've been kind of rinsing my hands off in. So I do keep that nearby. So in regards to this, now your dough, if left for too long, that's what you're noticing here. It will dry out a little bit, so you do need to add a little bit of water to it if it's left for too long. These have had the food colorings added, which is keeping them a little bit moister. So I'm just going to put that one back. So yeah, so we're going to start creating some interesting shapes and stuff. So I'm going to switch back to the main camera. There I am. So in regards to this, what you're going to want to do, I'm going to tilt this camera down just slightly if I can. Maybe not. Oh, yeah, you get a little bit better view. Okay, so what you're going to do is on your work surface that you're working, you are going to sprinkle just a small bit of flour. So that way it will not stick to the surface. So a small bit of flour, spreading it out, that kind of thing. Now this will cause your dough to dry out as well. So be careful when you do this, because again, you will want to continue to have water nearby that you can kind of pour into, kind of moisten your dough up again. So now it's up to you what you want to do. If you make shapes, you just plain using your hands, you will find that they're a little bit thicker. If you want to create some funky looking things, you can do that. So what we're going to do, I'm going to take a small bit of the green, so just tearing it off, and then I'm going to take a small bit of the red, again tearing it off. Now what I'm going to do with these is I'm going to start to make kind of like almost like sausages. I'm going to start to twist them. So again, how you decide to do this is up to you. So I'm going to do it this way just to make something unique. This is not going to be my be-all end-all. So right now what I'm doing is I'm going to create something that if I flatten it, so this is what it currently looks like. Okay, so it's kind of a mixture of both. I'm trying to go for kind of like a marbled effect. You can just flatten each ball. It's up to you how you choose to do it. I'm going to go for a slightly marbled effect so that when I cut out my ornaments, they kind of have a bit of both. Okay, so flip this over now. And remember, you want to have flour underneath. Okay, and just roll it out to your desired thickness. Now I'm trying to go quite thin. Okay, so we got cut off there, that's okay. I have a 5-minute recording time and then I'm going to splice everything together, so it shouldn't be too bad. Okay, so I'm going to just flip to the other camera for a minute so you can kind of see what I've done. So don't worry about the flour will just disappear. If you want to remove some of it, you can just put some water on it again, like I said. So you can kind of see what I've done. Okay, I've gone quite thin, so you can see it's quite a thin one here. Okay, and that means that it will dry out quicker. Okay, flipping back, sorry about that. Now back to me. So this is where you don't necessarily have to have cookie cutters. You can just have simple things like glasses. And if you just take your thing, I will flip back to the other camera so you can see it. So if you just take it, there we go, and cut. Okay, so I don't have to have cookie cutters to create ornaments. Okay, so there's my first one. And like I said to you, you can just take a straw or something and poke a hole. Okay, let's just lift that out. Okay, so there's my first ornament. Okay, and that can be just put in to bake or air dry, depending on which one I want to do. If you're air drying, it could take up to 48 hours, if not a little bit longer. If you're baking them, it could take up to 3 hours. It depends, again, how long it's been sitting out air drying. The idea here is that you want to dehydrate them as much as possible without them expanding and exploding, because yes, they will do that. Okay, so just be careful with it when you're doing it. So as I said, you can use cookie cutters, you can use anything you want, but you saw how easy it was just to create a marbled effect, so I don't have to do much in regards to that one. I can paint a decoration on it once it's done. I can add some glitter to it, but that could just be hung the way it is. I could add my cat's paw print. I could make them bigger and add my child's handprint. So there's different things you can do with these. It's up to you what you want to do. I could also, give me 2 seconds, let me switch back to me. Something else I could do is I could take a different shaped cookie cutter and I could get 2 ornaments out of the one. So if I choose something a little bit smaller than the one I just made, okay, so here we go, there's the one I just made. If I then take my cookie cutter and make a shape inside it, like this, okay, and lift that one out, that's my new ornament, okay? And then this ornament here could have another hole punched in it. And then I'd have 2 ornaments for the price of 1. Okay? So just make sure if you're using a straw that you remove these, because once they harden like cement. And we don't want you to have it so that you cannot get them out again. So there's my 2 ornaments there. So like I said, you can do just about anything. The nice thing about salt dough is you can do it like that. The other thing I could do is I could simply just take a piece of this and make a candy cane out of it. So I could simply mold that with my hands if I wanted to. Okay, so if I just want to do it like this, pinching the ends a bit, shaping them around. Okay, it's not the best candy cane in the world, but you get the idea. I could then use like a toothpick or something to poke a hole in this one because it's a little bit narrower, and do that kind of thing. So there could be another ornament. Okay, so it's really up to you what you do. You can do it by hand. I'm going to fix that up a little bit when I cut out, just so it looks a little bit better before I bake it. But because I've only got the one hand at the moment because I'm holding another camera. So the ornaments are quite tricky in regards to how you choose to do them. I can't tell you how to do them, okay? And then once you've got them made, just trying to move something out of the way for a minute. Once you've got them made, then you're going to either air dry them or bake them. It's up to you how you choose to do it. So let me just finish here, and I'm going to continue on in just a minute. So, right, so we've cut out some of our shapes. I've fixed up that candy cane a little bit. It looks a little bit better. Now, just so that you know or aware, so if anyone has played with multicolored Play-Doh in their life and is aware of what happens if you pick it up and re-scrunch it, eventually you'll end up with just like a one-colored ball of kind of brown. It's not really the red anymore. It's not the green. It's just kind of a mucky color. You can feel free to use that and paint over it, but just so you're aware that eventually if you mush it for long enough back, so pick up all what you've cut around and reshape it to flatten it back out again, you will end up with like a one-colored, mucky colored ball. And you can still use it, just, I mean, it's up to you if that's what you want, perfect. If not, that's okay. I have gotten to a situation where probably if you have been paying attention to stuff I've been saying, you could run into as well, which is about putting flour down. So there's a reason that we put the flour down. So here we go. I'm just going to switch to the other camera. Come on, other camera. There we go. Okay, so I've created these little ornaments, and now I'd like to pick them up. However, I don't know if you noticed the flour's kind of around them, but not really under them. So this gets to be a bit of a problem, but you can salvage them. You will have to kind of use something like a knife or something to just kind of lift them up, just because they will stick. Okay, so just be careful in regards to that. So they may misshapen as you're doing it. Don't worry, don't panic. You can kind of just nudge them back into shape if you want. As I said, it's up to you how you do this. There is no right or wrong answer in regards to this. It's up to you how you choose to do it, so you can see how it's stuck. Okay, so the back is not going to look very pretty in regards to that, but that's okay. And as I said before, you don't have to use a straw, so to poke the hole in these, I'm just going to use a toothpick. And what I do is I typically, oops, sorry, apologies, my finger. I just kind of put the toothpick in and go round and round and round until the hole I want is kind of big enough. Okay, so it's up to you how you do it. So you can kind of see I did the same kind of idea with my candy cane in regards to making the hole big enough. So it's not a big deal, you can see. So then what you're going to do is, as you can see here, I've put some of the grease-proof baking paper or parchment paper or whatever it is that you are using so that they don't stick. And I've just put them on there. I've got my ovens on. It's set to 200 degrees, 200 degrees Fahrenheit. So that is about 120 Celsius or gas mark 1, whatever's the lowest setting, because you want to bake these as slowly as possible. Now, the longer they sit out, air drying means that they will not need to have as long a baking time. So if I choose to air dry them, then that's one thing, but if I choose to bake them, the longer they sit out waiting to go in, the shorter time the baking is going to take. Okay, so there we go. You can now see. And I usually use something like a knife just to lift them and put them on. Oops. Lift them, put them on to the baking paper. Now these don't really expand when they like as in grow like cookies do. They don't spread out. And one thing I will say is that if I bake this like this, where the corner is up, it will bake like that. It will stay like that, okay? So just try to make sure they are as flat as possible and when you bake them, okay? So there we go. There's some of my ornaments that are ready to go in to the oven, okay? So that's what I'm doing for now. I'm going to continue to make some more ornaments, and then I will come back once they are baked or air dried and finish this up. And hopefully you will have some lovely ornaments that you can make as well. Okay, thanks. Okay, so, right. So I have cut them all out. I've baked some, I've air dried some. So this is now 3 days. Today's Tuesday. These were made on Saturday night, so Sunday night, Monday night, and now tonight. So almost 3 days worth of air drying. So after cutting them all out, there's a few things that I just want to add. So air drying's great, but it does take a very long time. It's up to you how you want to do it. I'm just going to quickly show you a couple of the ornaments that are, actually before I do that, I will, so air drying is fine. I just want to show you how some of the ornaments actually still look, because you can kind of see what's dried and what hasn't yet. So, and then I will talk you through a little bit more about in regards to, you know, what the next steps kind of can be. So I'm just going to show you some of the actual air dried ones, and I'll just talk you through how they're working. So let's switch camera. Okay, so here we are. So you can see these have been air dried, and you can kind of see here, sorry, just get my hand in. You can kind of see little damp spots still, and this one here you can see around the edges looks dry, but in the middle kind of is still looking a little bit moist. Same thing, so here's one of the stockings. You can see kind of how it's drying. So all of these on this tray have been air dried, so you can see how some of these look drier than others, whereas others still look like damp dough, whereas the edges and that have been dried. So as I said, these are now going on 3 days. So if you're air drying them, they do take a while. So we've got a couple of things that look like they're a little bit drier. Some of the ones that are cut out that have less dough on them are a little bit drier than some of the other ones. So you can see how also the food coloring has basically lightened. You don't notice it as much. So those are the ones that have had food coloring in them. So the tree and those ornaments over there. The stocking has a bit of it. It has the red and white. These ones here are just purely made out of the, I think the candy cane might have a tiny bit as well. But the rest of them are made purely out of just the leftover normal colored dough. This is one of the ones that was baked. This is kind of what happens if it goes too high for too long. So this one was originally green on the top and red on the bottom. You can kind of see that it's no longer looking like that. It's kind of gone almost all one color. It's darker on one side though. You'll see that it's also kind of popped up in spots. It's a little bit, it hasn't spread itself out. It still has its rough edges, which can kind of be cleaned up a bit if you want. I didn't go about that. Also, something I wanted to mention is that when you are making different things, so there's a couple of them. So these ones here all had, so we had one. So that is using the snowflake cookie cutter. That's just using the straw. That's using a kitchen utensil that had kind of slots in it, or just taking like a fork around the edges. So you can create different textures in that on them while you are creating them, just by doing that. So the ones that are cooked, you can kind of see are less flat than the ones that are air dried. Okay, so air drying definitely has its bonuses, but it takes a really long time. And then I've got little ones as well that this one here, I literally just rolled the last 3 bits of dough. That was the remaining bit, and I just squashed it with the rolling pin, so it actually has a funny kind of U shape to it. And it's still a bit damp because it's been air drying. So if I had left those as balls, they would have taken even longer to dry. So yeah, those are sort of what's going on at the moment, having dried them. And so I forgot about the 5-minute rule. So yeah, as you can see, the ones that were cooked kind of do curl up at the edges. The ones that are air drying, unless they're not dried flat, they will they do pretty good, but they do take a long time. You got to be careful though when you're cooking them as to how long you cook them, because otherwise you end up with quite a toasty looking one, which is not bad. So looking at different textures that you can create on some of them, just from household utensils. Right, so then we've got our food coloring ones, which if you've done this kind of thing, once they're dry, you might not want to actually paint them or anything. However, if you don't like the look of them, or you make a mistake and you want to, what I would recommend is painting them, putting a white coat over top of them to kind of hold the color, so that the color of the paint, because some of these can be quite light, while others of them might have been quite dark, depending on, so you can't tell which ones are, you know, really, really burnt versus, so you can kind of fix them up depending on what you want to see. So that's one thing, is I would, if you're going to paint them, I would give them a good coat of white paint to start. So then talking about the different stuff that we can create. So we've got our different ornaments, we can create textures. So this one I literally just poked with the fork and I can decorate it that way. So then once we've painted them, or once we have decided what we want to do with them, so here's an example of one that was baked. So you can kind of see how it's cornered up. And yeah, I did put a little bit of paint on it, but not a whole lot. And then just the ribbon. So it's got the food coloring background, it's got a little bit of paint on it. So, and it looks quite pretty just the way it is. That also has a coat of glue over top of it. Just plain white school glue. So you don't have to use anything special. You can get the Mod Podge, you can get the spray sealant, but as I said, all I've used is kids liquid white glue, which you can get pretty much almost anywhere. So that's a sample of what you can do just with a simple, that's a mini cup and some food coloring and then a little bit of white paint. So that's one example. The other thing you can do is, as we saw, some of the ones that we had, we got 2 ornaments out of. Okay, this one I didn't poke a hole in because eventually the string is going to come right down into the actual main hole. Those can become photo frames. So I'll just show you that for a minute. So there's one there. So you just glue the photo onto the back. It's not very pretty. You can always cover the back if you want with felt or something, decorating it up. So this one I just used a sponge to actually sponge some paint onto it. So it's been painted white, sponged a little bit of red onto it, took my paintbrush or a toothpick and painted some snowflakes in green, and then just added glue where I wanted it. So we've got some sparkles around the entrance and like around the hole for the picture, and then glued that on, and then covered the whole thing in white glue. So you can make different photo frames if you want to, for like memories of your kids for the year. I know that 2020 is not really the most memorable, but you know, it's up to you what you want to do. And as I said, if you've done it with just a plain, so this is a smaller cup inside a bigger cup, by all means you can do it that way. I had some cookie cutters. You'll remember this one from the very start. This is the one that I actually cut at the very start. So this one had one of the snowflakes in it to start, and then I removed the snowflake and got the 2 ornaments in one. So that is actually the very first one that I showed at the beginning. So you can do photo frames, they're great. The other thing that I wanted to just quickly show is, this was my pet's paw, and I just took a toothpick and put his name in it, painted it white, went around it with a Sharpie pen, put some red paint on it, and then covered the whole thing in glue. So I've got a memento of his paw. Could have done it with my child's hand, pushed them in, as I said. It's a nice way of just creating something, you know, unique. It's a great way of doing it, to keep something, so a keepsake. So those are a couple of ideas, and I'll get back to you in just a second once I've restarted. So I showed you the photo frame. I showed you a little memento of my pet's paw. I showed you one that is not really painted. It's got the food coloring background. You can also, once you've painted them white, so this is just an example, once you've painted it white, you could just add glitter. So this is just plain white, added glitter. Now you can paint the back if you choose so that it's double-sided. You don't have to. It's up to you what you want to do with these. As I said, that's the nice thing about this type of craft. It's totally up to you what you want to do. So those are just a couple of things. Now I'm going to go right back because, as I said, I showed you the very first one that I made, that I cut the second ornament out of the middle. And you'll remember just after I made that one, I took a piece out and I said I'm making a candy cane. So here's the candy cane that I made. Yes, it's got some rough edges, but you know what? If I didn't have cookie cutters and I wanted to make something with the kids, or, you know, do something fun or something a little bit different, I can do that. So this is, I decided in the end to paint it because I wanted it to be a bit brighter. I'm not using any special real brushes. I've got just a mixed pack that I got. So the main brushes that I was using are these 2. And then this one here I used for the glue. So it's a wee bit hard at this point, which is okay, but try to wash them off. I ended up using some acrylic paints. So there's the white that I was using, and then those are the 3 colors that I used. I didn't use any other colors. I had 4 glitters: gold, red, silver, and green. Just these 3 paints. And that's what I used to create all of the looks that I got. So you don't need a whole lot of stuff if you want to do this. So I also took advantage of some of them puffing up. So I've got a little tree, and this one here I added some white to make lighter green, and I literally just wanted to make it look a bit like it had some bristles from the tree, the fir tree. You can add sequins to it, so that's what the star is. Some more glitter. Also created a stocking. So stockings are never really flat, so it looks like it's got some stuff in it. So, you know, some goodies in it. You can paint them however you want. It's up to you. So doing it that way. And then I created this little guy. Now remember, I only had the 3 colors. So, I mean, one of the nice things is that you can play around with it. So this is created by mixing the different colors. If you weren't aware, if you mix red and green, guess what color you get? So the perfect for a gingerbread man, I put a little bit more red than I did green, so that it kind of ended up a little bit more vibrant as opposed to kind of a mucky color. You want to go vibrant, so put a little bit more red to it, but you can play around with it. So yeah, I know he's cross-eyed, but you know, you have some fun with the stuff. I mean, kids would love this kind of thing. And I mean, one of the great things is you can kind of see that it looks like his leg kind of had something happen here. He wasn't fully dry when I first put the white paint on him, but that didn't ruin it. I could still salvage it. So don't get, you know, frustrated if that doesn't work. You can use paint to hide little bits and pieces. You can, you know, it doesn't mean that it's ruined. I had a child burst into tears one day because his ornament, as I said, they puff up, and some of the times they'll actually burst because of an air bubble. And he was really upset because his ornament had burst. And we ended up creating this, which is kind of cool. We ended up putting paint inside it, you know, and by the end, he really liked it, and he gave it to me because he wanted me to have it when he was so proud of it afterwards. So, you know, and we ended up spraying the whole thing. This we used the spray sealant for. Those ones there, for the most recent ones that I've made, those we used the white glue. They actually have a bit more shine to them than the spray sealant. You can use whatever you want to hang them, it's up to you. But even if it bursts, you don't have to be upset. It doesn't have to ruin it. You can find ways to salvage it. So, you know, kids love making these, and I still have them. So they know I like my pets, so they put a little cat paw on it, and a memento from a class that I was with in 2017. You know, it's great. These are the kinds of things that kids love to do. So you don't have to be an artist. It's up to you how you do them. I mean, there's lots and lots of different ideas, things that you can create. And you go from, you know, a plain and simple dough, putting a bit of white paint on them, maybe some food coloring, you know, air dry cooking them, depending on what you have, what you want to do, using different things to create some different textures. And then you can create all sorts of things. And as I said, you don't have to be an artist. You don't have to get upset if something doesn't work out the way you want. Candy cane, that was actually painted twice because I didn't like the way I'd done it the first time. Got white paint, repainted over the whole thing, and could start again. So don't get frustrated with it. You know, some sponge. I didn't have to be an artist to do that. Really don't. I can throw some glitter on a white ornament, and you know, it looks really fun. It's not something that you have to get all frustrated with. These are great for kids. They love doing this kind of stuff. So, you know, if you've got time and you're looking for something to fill time, you know, why not make some salt dough ornaments? So as I said, flour, warm water, salt. And then it's up to you how you choose to decorate them. You know, and they look great on the Christmas tree. They're nice to give to, you know, family. You know, if you've got your child's school picture, or you've got something you want to make a kind of like a memento. I always usually go with my mom and we get Santa photos. Well, this year we didn't. So this is my photo for the year with me and my cat because we spent the most time this year together. Different things to capture how small somebody was. I actually have something similar to this with my hand from when I was, you know, like 4 years old. My mom still has it, and it's so much fun. So these are great, and you just can use pretty much anything. Like these are most of the stuff that I have here is from like the discount or dollar store, pound store, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be expensive. As I said, everything here is quite cheap, and it's quite easy to use and make, and just experiment and see what you can create. As I said, get a sponge and just kind of dab stuff on and see what you can make. The white paint. So all of these originally did look like this. You don't have to be really, really, neat with certain parts of it. One thing I do recommend is if you're working with paint or you're working with glue, I use these little tiny bowls. So you can still see I was using it for glitter. When I'm using it for wet paint or when I'm using it for glue, I actually put cling film saran wrap and I cover the bowl so that I don't have a whole mess on my hands, because I can then just curl up the saran, remove it from the bowl, and put it in the bin, and that's it done. It's an easy cleanup. I always use something on the table. Have things like paper towel. This is a fun one. Have things like paper towel, nearby, because that's where I was painting on. I was actually painting right on the paper towel, and it makes it nice and easy for cleanup. So there's nothing here that's really difficult, and it's quite fun. So as I said, it's up to you what you create. Just see what you end up with, and I sometimes mistakes turn out pretty cool, but yeah, it's a great wee thing to do. And as I said, baking can take some of these ones were 20 minutes. That was 30 minutes, and whoops, oh well, but as I said, some of those have turned out quite nice looking, and it's just up to you what you want to do with them. Air drying, as I said, going on 3 days. If I'm not careful and I touch those, or I try to lift them, or I try to paint them, those will, what do you call it? They might break holes in it. They might end up, with absorbing the paint, and then I might have something happen like what happened with the wee gingerbread man, or it might be that they just never dry. So you want to be careful that they are fully dry. I could pop these in the oven now and just 10 minutes on the very lowest setting I can get. Just play by ear, but you can see how it's clear what's dry and what's not. So yeah, it's just have fun with it. So let's see what you guys can create. I'm going to flip back to me for a second. So there we go. So hopefully you've had some ideas, and hopefully you've got some cool, ways of keeping yourself occupied, or the kids occupied, or, so yeah. I hope that you guys enjoy doing stuff like this. As I said, you don't have to be an artist. It's great fun for the kids, or for anybody. I mean, if I don't want to eat a whole lot of, cookies, biscuits, gingerbread, but I, want to have some fun, want to still do some Christmas baking, can do stuff like this, and then I don't have to put on any calories. So yeah, and then just, hang them and enjoy. It's one of those great things that it's not that hard to do. And then you've got all these cool ornaments. So hopefully I've given you some ideas, and hopefully you are, your craftiness comes out. Where's the cat again? The only other thing I want to add is I used yarn, because I have yarn around for my crocheting. When I did it with the kids, I used curling ribbon. You could just use needle and thread. It's up to you if you've got, special hangers or that you've used for ornaments, you can use that. And all I did, they're nice and easy, just a wee loop. And then I popped it through. Oops. And if you just put it through the loop, then I can take it off and change it if I feel like it. So it's not a difficult thing to do. The wee ones, I'm going to be putting needle and just a wee piece of thread through. So it's just totally up to what you have around. You don't have to buy anything really special to do this. You can print pictures off and get them, at the shop if you want. I just printed that on my home printer. Great thing to do, and I created all sorts of stuff that I can hang on my tree or decorate or give away or whatever I choose to do with them. So yeah, and I've still got tons left over to paint, as you could see. So hopefully I've given you some inspiration, and I'd love to see what you guys can create. I hope that you will do create some cool stuff. Just remember, low settings, longer time and be patient with them. If you've got kids, make it a science experiment. You know, how long does it take for them to dry? Are they dry yet? You know, how long has it been? Even with the paints, you know, mixing colors, seeing what colors you end up with. I only use the 3 colors, but if you have yellow as well, you can create orange. You can talk about, you know, all sorts of stuff like that. I don't, if I didn't buy blue or I didn't buy yellow, but those are different things that you could do. It's up to you. These are not special paints. I used acrylic paints, which is what I'd probably recommend. That's exploring the Christmas tree behind me. He's checking out the ornaments. So yeah, hopefully you get to create some cool stuff, and you don't really need anything special to do it. So good luck.